Democracy requires inquiry and participation, so thank you to the audience here and watching online. And a special thank you to all of the candidates who are running for office in Amherst in Amherst 2025 municipal elections, especially the ones who have shown up for tonight. My name is Kathy Campbell, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Amherst, although I vote in Franklin County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization whose mission is to encourage informed and active citizen participation in government. We are partnering tonight with Amherst Media, who is live streaming and recording this event. The recording will be rebroadcast later until Election Day and also available on Amherst Media's YouTube channel. We do not have time for the candidates to introduce themselves tonight, so we also encourage you to take a look at the candidates' statements on Amherst Media's YouTube channel. We also thank the Amherst Regional High School and their staff for making this space available for our forum tonight. And finally, I'd like to thank the members of the Amherst League who have worked very hard these last few weeks to make tonight's event a success. As you all know, Amherst's biennial election is November 4th. The last day to register to vote is October 24th. That's tomorrow, Friday, by 5 p.m. We'll have time for several questions from the audience tonight, and at the end of each part, we have two parts to tonight's forum, each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement. Some questions have already been submitted in advance through the League's website, and we encourage you to write your own question on an index card, and when you're ready to have it picked up, just hold it up in the air and one of our runners will come and pick it up from you. Be sure that your questions are addressed to all the candidates, not just one of them. We always get more questions than can be answered in the time available, so our volunteers here are sorting questions in order to reduce repetition. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question. We have 2 timekeepers in the front row. They have 30-second and 15-second warning signs and a stop sign. So candidates, please finish your sentence quickly when you see the stop sign and stop speaking. Also, please be sure to speak directly into the microphone. So first this evening, first part, we have 6 candidates for the 5-member school committee. They are Esther Azar, Andrew Hart, Deborah Lee Leonard, Sarah Marshall, Laura Jane Hunter, and Bridget Hines. Please silence your phones and put them away, and please also hold your applause until the end of the closing statements. We're running on a very tight schedule here. This time belongs to our candidates, so let's listen to what they have to say. So, first question. A lot of campaign statements sound pretty similar, things like supporting equality, improving schools, or getting students more involved. Can you share one specific policy or approach that local officials are using right now that you think is not working? And how would you do things differently to get a better result? Ms. Marshall, would you start us off with that?
I just want to be sure I heard it right. What's a policy? Just a policy or policy in something? Or procedure or something?
The question says one specific policy or approach that local officials are using that you think is not optimal.
Maybe one that other candidates here would also choose is that's our budget process, especially at the regional level. It's very challenging. Maybe it's always been challenging, but in this era when funding is falling so short and the needs in the schools are so great, it has been, at least for the last 2 years, a very painful and somewhat contentious process that is, somebody called it traumatic for the educators and families, and it certainly is. So there's limits to how we change the process, but I hope we can, maybe through more communication or better planning or something, or continued advocacy at the state level, somehow find a way to make this a smoother and less difficult part of our annual, part of our duties.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Sarah. The budget process is very difficult. We've lost $2 million over the last 2 years, and those are cuts that have had tremendous impacts. Their teachers, their administrative staff, the people who make the trains run on time, they're people who mean a lot to our individual students. We had 7 hours of public testimony about the impact of the budgets last year, and one story that stuck out to me was a 3rd grade parent whose son didn't read at the start of the year, and at the end of the year, that man's son was reading him bedtime stories, but that was one of the positions on the table. I worked really hard in my time on school committee on the Fiscal Sustainability Committee with Deb. We've issued a report with some recommendations to help make it sustainable long term. I've spoke at the House Ways and Means Committee to try and advocate as well for better charter school reimbursement in particular. And I'm just trying to look, advocating for solutions like solar or green HVAC to reduce some of the pressure on our operating budgets. Anything we can do to make the budget process better is going to make a win. Our children are worth it. Our students are worth it. We need to really put our best foot forward as a community, working together collaboratively in partnership to make this work.
Thank you. Ms. Leonard?
Oh boy, hi. That's a hard one because budget, communication, there's lots of places to talk. And so I think I'm going to switch directions a little bit and talk about something that is more about the structure, the functioning of the school committee, which is a little bit boring. But I feel like part of the budgeting situation has to do with trying to get ahead a little bit instead of being reactive, which is hard because there are emerging issues. So balancing that with making sure that we plan ahead, and we have started that at the regional and Amherst level in terms of creating an annual agenda, but that's still a work in progress, and I think that still has areas for improvement. So that's where I'm going to go. I think we could do a better job getting our self-governance more reflective, and part of that involves some sort of self-evaluation, which we haven't done. But also really just thinking about ahead of time where we need to be and counting backwards and maybe adding a little bit of extra time for the inevitable delays that come up, because just committee work is slow, and I'm sorry for that because we would all like it to be a more efficient process. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Azar?
Thanks. Hi. So I'm going to talk about the budget, and I'm going to talk about it on the town level because I think that monies are going to places that are not prioritizing our children, and our children are really important. And our children and our families make up the largest percentage of this community, and we need to take care of them. And monies are going to things that are excessive, replacing police cars every 3 years, buying new vehicles that don't need to be replaced in order to be green. I am very much for environmental changes. However, we need to think about the state of our schools, which are right now in crisis. There's so many changes happening, so many things that are up in the air that need to be dealt with, and our kids don't have teachers in the classroom. And that needs to be addressed, and it really starts with the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Hart?
So I will talk about the budget, but also sort of stemming from what Deb's talking about. I think we need a strategic framework, something that potentially maybe even town council and committee could work on together, something to where we could set ourselves up to look not just 1 year ahead, but 5 years ahead, and agree on what we want our schools to become, what direction we want to steer them towards, so that we can, when we have disagreements, when we have these long, prolonged budget battles like we did last year, we can check ourselves with what we agreed upon to where we want to go, to what, there's so many things we could take this school district, the direction we could take the school district in, that I hope that we could, just agree on something together, and hopefully it'll iron out those bumpy patches where we just we can't agree enough. And thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Hunter.
Hi, I'm Laura Jane Hunter. My pronouns are she, her, and I just want to say thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for having us tonight. This is a great opportunity, and I'm so pleased to see so many people here. This question is one that I've thought about a great deal, and I'm going to go in a completely different direction. I believe that given what the responsibilities are of the school committee, which is to guide, support, and direct the superintendent, that we need to create a whole different way of thinking about how we evaluate the superintendent's work, because I think doing this, creating a 360-degree evaluation plan where all the constituents are included, families, students, educators, including paraeducators, and allowing them to have a voice in what their experience is of the district, thank you, is something that's missing right now. And we have so many opportunities for collaboration with seasoned, brilliant, caring education professionals, and we need to hear what their experience is in the schools. And so I think that because that is part of what school committee can do, it should be something that we take on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question. What do you think the school committee can do better to support marginalized students, including BIPOC, low income, English language learners, and special education students? Ms. Azar, could you start with that? Ms. Azar, are you going to start?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just take my time.
Good idea.
Grounding. There's a difference between inclusion and belonging. There's a difference between welcoming a student into a classroom and actually having them feel like a part of that classroom. And we have a responsibility to create belonging for all of our students. And that means that when we're making decisions on the policy level, that we want to think about what kind of learning can happen in the classroom that includes everybody, that is speaking to everyone's different diverse learning and identities and skill sets and the ways that they think and the ways that they understand the world, and bring that into the classroom with us. We don't have to have these separations between special ed and general education. There can be more inclusion in the classroom because we're teaching to every student in the room. And I think that that's, I'm a multisensory educator. It means that when I'm educating, I try to think about all the different sensory processing things that we can use in order to engage a child, and I think that that needs to be part of our classrooms.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall?
It's a good question. So, two thoughts. First of all, one of the responsibilities of the school committees is to set policies, because those provide the direction for the superintendent. The policies set out our goals for the school, for the education, for the community, for everything. And so I have been the liaison to the Special Education Parent Advisory Council throughout this term. And one of their questions to us, the candidate survey, asked about how we can incorporate neurodiversity into all the diversity that we are already lay out in our policy and value. And I noted that, in fact, the word neurodiversity or diverse doesn't occur in any of our policies. So that's something we can do to articulate and recognize that that's an aspect of inclusion we very much want to emphasize and work towards. But secondly, I think at this point, it's a matter of defending the budget, defending the services that serve those student groups. The special ed instruction, the paras, the special programs for some students, the systems of support for academically struggling students. So,
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
Well, this is such an important question because every student deserves to walk into the school building and feel seen, welcomed, and appreciated, sometimes even celebrated. And so structuring our classrooms so that that happens is really important. And I think it's a matter that comes from the highest levels and works all the way down in how we structure things, whether it's universal design and education for all. Or one thing I'm really proud of, I worked with Deb and William on our Title IX subcommittee to get the Welcoming Schools initiatives across all the schools. So every staff member from the highest level to the people every day in the office and on the bus and everything like that are trained in how to be welcoming to all our students. I'm also the chair of the of the School Equity Advisory Committee, and we've done a full equity review on the regional schools and are working together in partnership with the superintendent and with the district leadership and teachers on making the schools more equitable, and I've expanded that to include the elementary schools as well. I think it's just key for us that we start to think of ways that every student, when they show up, whatever their circumstance, feels like they belong and are welcomed and even celebrated.
Thank you. Ms. Leonard?
That's probably the most important thing educational experience, or at least it's the first one. Do they feel like they're in a safe, welcoming environment? You can't learn if you don't feel that way. So it's the foundation, and then of course it cuts through every layer of their experience here, in the cafeteria, on the playground. So it's such an essential part, and our educators are stretched really, really thin. We have been asking them to do more for less. Less resources, less time. And they can't do it all. They've been telling us that. You know, they've been saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this after school club. Or I'd like to, and they don't get paid very much for it. But I do. So it goes back to budget. It really does. If we want this to be an and it is foundational, instead of an or, we need to put our money where our values are. And so we need training, we need time, we need space. They need to be able to pay, for God's sake, so that they can come back to the classroom and be present. So there's a lot that budget will do to help this, but it's not the only thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart?
Yeah, I first want to second just about what everyone has said. I completely agree, especially when thinking about making sure that our idea of diversity includes neurodiversity and students with disabilities and learning differences. I think things like universal design, making sure that curriculum can meet students where their difference is instead of asking them to meet us where we want them or we think they should be, is incredibly important. And along the lines of what what Deb is saying too, just in terms of budgeting, even how we talk about students with disabilities in our budgeting process. And how sometimes it could make families feel like those students are being blamed for higher costs, for how the budget might be bigger. I've heard town councilors use that exact language, which is disheartening. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. What is your vision for the sorry.
Oh, Laura.
I didn't get to
think
talk
I read
yet.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you want me to?
I guess
you want me
I
to skip
called
the
Mr.
question?
Hart out of line, out of order. Ms. Hunter.
That's okay. So this question, of course, is critical as we think about how we provide education in a public setting to all students who need it. And we cannot ignore institutionalized racism, which is baked deeply into all of our systems in the United States. We cannot ignore the fact that children are marginalized for being, I've heard this term and I love it, neurospicy. That's a term that actually the community uses, and I went to a wonderful training and they were talking about being neurospicy. I just thought that was so evocative. We must be aware of our privilege to live in a community like Amherst, and we must also value the educational system that we have. I'm sure many of you know that Wildwood has the ILC, which is the Integrative Learning Center, yes, which is a magnet program for students with severe learning disabilities and special needs, and it is an extraordinary program. And the fact that we can do that at Wildwood means we can do things like that to address inequities in racism, in homophobia and transphobia, in neurospiciness. And I also would just quickly add, no canned curriculum, no teaching to the test. That is not going to help our students.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question. What is your vision for the Comandantes program, and how do you think it needs to be adapted for 6th grade and the middle school? Ms. Leonard, could you start?
Just me, and the middle school?
And the middle, 6th grade and the middle
Okay.
school.
Oh, boy. That's a really hard one because in, not this year, but the previous year, we lost an important part of the world language program in the middle school. So our students are no longer able to take enough language for them to reach, okay, I can't remember the name, but DESE has levels, and they aspire to students reaching the highest level, and they can't do it without doubling up, which it can be done. But so that's a budgetary issue too. I'm sorry, but we can't do Comandantes in the middle school unless we have a more robust language program, and that involves more money. I mean, we already have, those educators have fractional positions, which is a hard way, I mean, it's just a hard way to go through life with a fractional job. And they split positions between buildings. In terms of Comandantes, I think we need to, I got some ideas, but I think we just really need to keep it in a way, integrate it in a way, think broadly about how we can make it so that it is compatible with the needs of other learners, and I think we can do that.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
Oh, great, thank you. We have in this district the richest wealth that we could possibly have, which is experienced educators who are devoted to the work they do. We also have students who are experiencing the schools. I am not a 5th grader. I don't know what it's going to feel like to go into a middle school that is trying to adapt to me. But you know who does know what that's going to feel like? The students themselves. The teachers know what the students need. We need to develop, and the school committee cannot do this alone, we need to develop collaborative processes where we bring together the people who are actually the experts in this situation, and that's the educators and the students. Parents, maybe a little secondary to that, because they're not fully experiencing it, they're experiencing it through the eyes of their children. And I'd love to hear directly from those students. There are ways that we can do this that can help this transition become smoother. There's no doubt there's going to be rocky parts to it, and I think we just have to be prepared for the fact that we're going to be figuring things out in a way as we go, and we absolutely need to rely on the experts, which is not a top-down model. It's a model that comes from the students and the teachers themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Hart.
So this is obviously like a very complicated question and a good one, and something that's personal to me because my daughter is in 5th grade and at Fort River, and she is in the Explorers program, and she is in a classroom that's really, really struggling right now to find its center, and it's been tough, and I think in my opinion, it stems from the design of having two separate programs, two separate tracks in elementary school, and how how staff gets sorted across that, and how students do. And like Deb was saying, to some degree, the Comanantes program, in my understanding of it, isn't accessible to all learners. So the learners that it's not accessible to all get pushed together into a group, and it's challenging for the faculty of Fort River to meet all those learners where they are, and the funding behind that isn't adequate. There should be more teachers dedicated to those classrooms, and more paras, and it's really problematic. So in short, I would say that the Comanantes is a fantastic idea, and a really, I have to stop, but it's a fantastic idea, and it should exist, but it should be rethought so that it is more equitable to all students and faculty.
Thank you. Ms. Hines.
I just want to say first off that every solution to some of the problems that Andrew's talking about starts with recognizing that Comanantes is a gem in our system. I'm a little biased. I was one of the parents when my son was in preschool. He's 19 now, advocating for a bilingual immersion program. It's so important. We've got the research. It demonstrates that kids learn so much quicker the second language at that age and level, but also that it helps them be stronger academically all around. So this is a program I value and want to keep, and we have so many very skilled bilingual educators who are amazing, from the librarian at Crocker Farm to folks who are working right in Comanantes. So Comanantes is key, I think, to the way forward. I think an interesting question, if some of the problems that happen from the fact that Comanantes can't add new students right now as it goes and has less students on IEPs, and so we get some resource distribution that doesn't look as equitable as we'd like it to. Some of those questions maybe could be solved by expanding the program and making it bigger and more robust. So, and in terms of the middle school, I think having dedicated Comanantes programs through 6th grade is really important. At the middle school, there's a little bit of a structural issue I won't get into. It's technical, but I also support that.
Thank you. Ms. Azar?
I'll get into it a little. I don't know enough, but I know a little bit, which is that the Comanantes program is an Amherst program, and the middle school and the high school are regional programs, which means that there are four towns that are involved. And I'm a little bit confused about how Comanantes was approached, with the idea that it would go through high school without having approval from the other towns. So that's something that I'm trying to understand more, how that happened, because there was a promise made, and I'm not clear. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I'm learning as I go. And so obviously money is always an issue, and I could just say that till for the rest of the night. I don't know if that's what you were referring to.
It was exactly.
Okay, great. And so, it requires approval from all the other towns. And I hear, thank you. I'm going to take a breath. I know that Caminantes is really important, and we need to find a way to make it work, and it's going to take a lot of creative thinking, so.
Thank you. And Ms. Marshall?
Thank you. So much of what I would say has been said. I just want to clarify, although I may be mistaken, Caminantes was initiated as an Amherst Elementary School program. Started off as kindergarten, adding a grade a year. I don't think there's ever been a discussion about having the same kind of program at the region. I also don't know how that would work since students come in from towns that don't have Caminantes. So the the middle and high schools offer world languages. So I believe this next year's 6th grade, I don't believe there's 6th grade Caminantes this year. Am I?
There might be, yeah.
I thought we didn't have it yet. Okay, if we already have it, then great. Then because the educators have had to develop the curriculum every year for the next grade. So if we've done all K through 6, that's wonderful. And the program can continue for the 6th graders no matter where they're located. You would just have the teachers in the middle school or wherever the 6th graders are. I'm hoping that, as somebody said, the program might be able to grow so that it could occupy a whole school. Maybe that would be Crocker Farm, because that will be the smaller of the 2 schools, in which case that would reduce a lot of the problems that we see right now at Fort River.
Thank you. Most of you, in fact, I think all of you, have mentioned the issues we have with budgeting. What specific actions would you take to prioritize school funding? Would you recommend a Prop 2.5 override? Let's see. Ms. Hines, would you start on that?
Sure. So some of the fiscal challenges I think that we face are really related to fixed costs and then rising costs. We've got fixed costs that eat up a huge chunk of our budget. Deb can give us the exact numbers, but it's almost 40%. Then we've got utilities raising it like 10%. No, that's transportation. Utilities are up 18%. The costs are going up and up. Probably one of the places we aren't rising that much is actually educator wages. We're only at 2.5%. So the trends are really interesting. And the reason I bring those up is because I think the first thing that we needed to do, at least me, having served my first school committee term last term, was to understand the situation. And now out of that, I've really been able to get some very clear ideas about things we can do. Charter school reform, Deb and I brought a petition to the school committee that was signed, but now is a bill going before the state. There are other really specific things we can do. I think townwide we need a conversation about how we distribute funds and how we make those more equitable, because we talk about equal percentages, but the Mars Commission, who spoke with us, actually showed that general government is increasing at about 10% more than our investment towards the schools. So the schools are being funded at a different ratio. So those are some of the sort of conversations we need to have collaboratively in our community about what we value and how we want to fund things.
Ms. Leonard?
Oh boy, I get to follow Bridget. Yes, and so this is my thing. So Chapter 70 reform is on everyone's mind, and if it is on yours, please talk to me, because I want you to understand what hold harmless is and what it means for these districts, because that is directly related to any kind of Chapter 70 reform. So that aside, there are baked in things that aren't working. There is the Fair Share Amendment. That was $2 billion collected every year. Are we in our 3rd year? and it's not being distributed, and it's not being distributed equally. So, and that is dedicated to transportation and education, and K through 12 has been left out of that, and I don't want to say entirely because Senator Comerford reminds me that it is being used to do important things that the Student Opportunities Act was designed to do to support schools that are in less well-off communities than ours, into Holyoke and Springfield, for instance. But that means there's less for us. So there's rural school aid, which would work for the region. That was reduced by our governor this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
I don't need to repeat all the budget issues, so I can talk about some other things, which thank you for all the work you've done so far, especially Bridget and Deb. It's a logical thing to say that to fully fund our schools is to lift the floor for everyone. If our schools are fully funded and we start with an abundance model rather than a deficit model as we develop the budget, then as we raise the floor for everyone in our community, we're also going to draw in families who are drawn to this school system that is a gem. And that will actually improve things like property taxes because we'll have more people that are joining our community. I also think it's very important that we vote in a town council that supports the school budget. That has not been the case. I'm going to highly recommend to everyone in this room that you support the town councilors who have committed themselves to funding the schools, fully funding the schools as needed. And some of them are in this room: Allegra Clark, Jill Breivik, Amber Cano-Martin, and Alicia Walker. Those are people who will support the schools, who will fight hard to fund the schools, and voting them in is literally the most important thing we can do for our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart.
Man, I have to follow all that. I think my first suggestion would be to do whatever Bridget and Deb tell us we should do, because they are such a wealth of knowledge and are so well informed, and yeah, I'm in awe of what they do for us, and I'm ashamed that I didn't know more about all the work that they've been doing up until now. But seconding what Laura is saying is, yeah, I think we need to put the onus back on town council to bring in more revenue, to expand the tax base so that we can stop having these fights and asking the schools to need less. I think additionally, I'll just leave it at that, and to call out folks who continually ask, like I guess I'm going to repeat myself, for the schools to need less. The schools make up nearly 50% of the town budget, and they should, because they're the most important thing this community can do is raise children. I know that this community has helped raise my children, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall.
Thank you. I, of course, endorse all the suggestions for and the work of advocating at the state level for changes to legislation and funding formulas and the real nitty-gritty that has so damaged us, both the regional levels and the elementary level over the years. The funding in Amherst Regional, we are not the only districts by far that are facing terrible financial headwinds. It's a real problem in how the state structures its support for schools. So yes, yes to all the advocacy. In the end, the school committees control to expenses, but not revenue. So if we're not getting the money we want one way or another, despite the strong advocacy, to our town councils and our regional partners, what do? we have to make cuts, and we've been doing that over the years, and it's super painful. I think one of the parts of the question was Prop 2.5. That's really tough. I would think that will be really hard at the regional level because you'd need all 4 towns to agree. And the smaller towns don't even have the resources that we do. So maybe worth trying, but.
Thank you. The next question is. Here you are.
I don't really want to go,
Ms.
didn't have to
Azar,
say
please.
See how much I don't want to go? The town council says that they are interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion. They say that they're interested in our schools. They say that they're interested in our children, but the voting record doesn't show that. More money is going to things that I think are not where we need them. Our school building is dripping water from the ceiling, and we are building a library for millions of dollars. Our school buildings need to be fixed. Our school buses need to function without wheels falling off as they are driving home. These are things that need to happen, and the easiest thing that we can do in this room right now is vote in a new town council. We could talk about all these other state fundings, but we need to vote in people that are going to prioritize our schools and our children, because they're the most important pieces of this community. This is what brings us together, is our families. And we need to take care of them. Oh, I have 15 seconds. And if we want to fix the fascism in the world, we need to take care of our children. Our children. We're all talking about fascism and all this stuff, but we need to take care of our children, and we're not taking care of them if we're not paying for their schooling. Sorry, I'm getting a little angry. Not sorry.
Thank you. All right, now next question. What are your top 3 priorities for the superintendent? Ms. Hunter, would you start?
Absolutely, thank you. I think about this all the time. I've lived in Amherst for 10 years, and during that time, I've seen a lot of disruption and instability in the district, and I've thought a lot about how we could stabilize the district. One of the ways I already spoke about, which is my idea for a 360 evaluation of the superintendent, done by calling in the voices of the students, the educators, the families, the people who are experiencing education. Second, I believe we really must revise our antiquated and dysfunctional and illogical hiring practices. The district is still holding on to an era that was characterized by cronyism and corruption. And I believe that we can actually fix the hiring practices by relying on the best practices that exist. There are multiple organizations, the MTA, Mount Holyoke College, UMass Amherst, where I work, excellent hiring practices that will allow us, because we must be unbiased, right? That is critical, that we have anti-racist hiring practices, inclusive hiring practices. And we can do that if we actually bring meaningful change to the hiring practices, and that was only 2. I have a third, I'll tell you later in secret.
Ms. Hines.
For me, the very first thing we can do, like for priorities for the superintendent, I think it's actually more a priority for the school committee, which is to support her. I don't mean universally support her. I love asking tough questions. That's what makes my Tuesday nights. But we brought someone in who is very, very skilled and who's seeing the need for some changes and some continuity throughout our system, and then has a lot of big challenges in front of her, right? The redistricting, a 6th grade academy, just moving forward. How are we determining what our graduates get now that am really happy MCAS no longer is a graduation requirement, but now that it isn't, there's some really big things in front of us. Never mind the budget season, which we've heard is going to be tougher than last year. So my first priority is we support her. Second thing is that we make equity a part of all her goals, and that's one thing I already made sure to push forward with, and she's got equity integrated throughout her annual goals that we put forward. And the third priority, I think, is really innovation, giving us room for academic innovation and ways to grow. We have STEM programs, we have history, social studies programs, we have amazing things in the schools that we need to create space for our amazing teachers to make more amazing. Sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall.
Thank you. I'm going to start by listing one that I don't really need to list because it's going to be happening very soon, and that is for the superintendent to bring us a strategic educational plan. That work has been ongoing for this last year. I've had a little bit involved in that, and so that be hugely important. The districts have not had a strategic plan in quite some time, I don't believe, so that's vital. But since that's in development, I'll name some others. One critical is to stabilize the school building leadership. Principals, assistant principals, all that, we've had a lot of, there's retirements and, people don't stay forever, so there's always going to be some change. But there have been some real hot spots of instability, and that's very distressing to the students and educators and families. So that's a priority for me. Second is to lean into, you asked about evaluating, I think, or monitoring, or it's come up, of the superintendent. She also needs to lean into, and it's the job of a superintendent, into the accountability and evaluation systems of the entire staff. It flows through the whole staff. It's not just that we hold her accountable, but she has to hold the people under her accountable all the way to the bottom. And, elementary school math.
Ms. Azar.
I'm going to go with what Bridget said around support. I think that Dr. Z was brought in at a moment where there's a lot of shifts, a lot of changes happening, and a lot of pressure on the superintendent. And again, we're back to the budget. She needs more support financially so that she can get things done. And I think that the superintendent, in general, the school committee's mandate is to supervise the superintendent. And I think that, there's communication issues that need to be addressed. There's a lot of miscommunication happening, and so that's one area where I think that support could be helpful. Sorry, I didn't say 30. Thank you. And I think that she's put in an impossible position right now, and it's very hard to know how well the schools can do because we don't have the budget to see. We can't even tell how the superintendent is doing because she is working with such small resources, such little resources that she, it's really challenging. So I think there's coaching that has to be done, and once again, back to the budget.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Hart.
Yeah, I think all three priorities for me would be communication. I think she has a impossible job right now, and I totally agree that we need to support her rigorously. And I think communication from the top down can be really challenging as a parent. Sometimes it's too much information, too much context, and other times it's no context. And sometimes, and often it feels like it's catch up. So stuff I will hear from my kid will be addressed, much later. So I think it's sort of just like scaffolding something, facilitating a process for her so it's much easier to reach parents, to reach families, to reach us as a committee. And even in terms of meeting design, I think I've been in meetings where it's an ask me anything kind of forum, and it's difficult because I think when people, especially when the people are talking about their children, there's so much emotion there because we all care so deeply about our children that I think we need structures to have containers for big emotions so that people can share things, people can feel heard, people can feel seen, and you can move on and still do the business of leading. So communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leonard.
Well, I'm on the superintendent evaluation subcommittee, and we're meeting next Monday, so I'm taking notes. But one of the things that I think bears explaining is that the school committee is charged with working with the superintendent to develop annual goals, and those annual goals are supposed to be something that adds up to SMART, and one of them is measurable. Specific something, I'm not going to remember that, but anyway, so the measurable is really important, and it's really easy to think high, and we really need to think about how that is both, how that translates into a SMART goal and a measurable goal, because that's part of the evaluation subcommittee. But beyond that, I'm just going to go much more basic. The 6th grade move is keeping me up at night. And I just really want that to be, these are people who were, they were COVID kindergartners. And right now, the plan is for them to be our inaugural 6th grade academy students. And that's really causing me a lot of stress, and I'm sure I'm taking it out on people, and I'm sorry, everyone. But it's really, really hard. And so the 6th grade move and other things.
I got everybody on that one, didn't I?
Yeah.
So, thank you. How have your life experiences prepared you for this school committee position? Mr. Hart, would you start?
I knew I was going to be first. So in my day job, I am a multimedia producer, and a writer, a graphic designer, and I've been working in higher ed communications for a little over 18 years. 11 of those years were in Hampshire College, a place I love dearly. And I've spent a lot of my time, and especially in the last 6 years, figuring out new ways to communicate just how valuable education is to families. And what I want to bring, or what I would hope to bring to the committee, is just a renewed sense of, like what I was talking about in the last answer, is a specific attention to communication. And I would love the opportunity to help this committee communicate out to the public and to families, and to communicate specifically to town council about the incredible importance and value that our educational system has to all of us.
Thank you. Ms. Azar?
I knew that was coming too. I have autism and ADHD. That means that I see patterns and I think out of the box. That has served me well. And it means that I'm a systems thinker, and I know how to interrupt systems, and I know how to shift them. And right now, the school committee is dealing with systemic issues that need disruption. We need to find a way forward, and my skill set, there's a million other things that I could tell you about. I'm a mediator, restorative justice circle keeper, which I think we should bring back to our schools. Could we have some budget for that? Sorry, you didn't hear me. I'm a rabbi. I've been an educator for many, many years. And I'm also trauma informed. I'm a therapist. And so when I'm thinking about students, when I'm thinking about teachers, when I'm thinking about the whole system, all of those pieces are working in my head. That's why it takes me so long to answer questions, because every time I am answering a question, 4 million things are in my head. And so I'm distilling a lot of information constantly, and that's what allows me to actually come up with solutions that we might not think of. And I'm always pushing, oh, stop. New solutions.
Thank you. Ms. Leonard?
Do you mind repeating the question?
How have your life experiences prepared you for this school committee position?
Nothing can prepare you for this. This is so much fun. I would say my life experiences have both helped me and hindered me. So I am naturally a behind-the-scenes person, and so my love of data and data diving is really kind of, I think, my strength. But I think I've also partnered really well with Bridget for that reason, because she's the creative thinker. She's the big picture. I've said this before. I said, you know, that report that we worked on would still be on my computer if it wasn't for Bridget, for many different ways. So I think I'm a good team player in that. I think I listen well, and I think those are part of my experience as an educator, to really listen for the question instead of the tone or what the intention is. So that's part of my training as a constructivist. So it's kind of all over the place, but I'm really most comfortable teaching physics. And honestly, I'm not nervous when I do it. So I know I come off that way, and that's kind of who I am. So I've just got to roll with it. Thank you.
Ms. Hunter?
Thank you. I have lived in Amherst for 10 years, and for every one of those 10 years, I have been an active volunteer in our schools. I served as class parent every year for 2 classes, because my children are 1 grade apart, so I would be their 1st grade class parent and the 2nd grade class parent. I did that the entire time I was at Wildwood with my children. I also was the treasurer for the PGO for the last few years that I was at Wildwood, and then when my children moved into the middle school, I worked with the wonderful Sheila Jones, and we were the PGO. We were co-chairs and treasurers and planners, and we did everything. And in the high school now, my kids don't want me around, so I serve as the newsletter creator and editor, I guess, for the Friends of the Performing Arts. So I'm always involved in the schools in some way. I'm also married to a longtime educator. I have a lot of friends in the district. I feel like I have a great handle on who to ask if I need to know things. And I asked Bridget if I should make a joke here, and she said if it's a good one. So I work too hard and I care too much. No, that was a joke. I do work hard, and I do care. But ultimately, I think that my life experiences as a social worker, as a person who works in public health, who's been in higher education since 2005, I have a deep understanding of the educational systems and our district. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marshall?
I think we were asked this 2 years ago, so I could say everything again. Plus, I have almost 2 years of experience on school committee, so that prepares me for another 2 years. But so let's see. I also sent my daughter through our schools here and was the class parent and did all those things. I've served on various, before being on school committee, I served on various town committees, so I'm pretty familiar with how town government works and how, committee work and open meeting law and all that. Also, years ago, in another state, I was a high school science and math teacher. So I feel, I haven't been an administrator, but I feel I've been a public school student, I've been a parent, I've been a teacher. And it's really important to me. My husband went to private schools, I went to public schools, and we had some tussle over that, but our daughter graduated from here. So
Thank you. Ms. Hines.
Yeah, so that's a hard one to go last on. Maybe Andrew's still left, I forget.
Oh, no.
So I
All
think,
you.
I think school leadership requires a combination of analytical skills, logic, but also a really deep sense of listening. And I think one characteristic I have as a person is I listen with a thoughtful heart and I integrate diverse perspectives. And that comes from early work in my career, working internationally in international education, that type of work, and also just something that I developed over time doing educational leadership. And in terms of equity, that issue came up. That's not just a passion of mine. I have 20 years experience designing inclusive programs, doing educational research, analysis, program evaluation, and school improvement plans. So I am prepared, I think, really well for school committee in terms of professional alignment, but that doesn't always add up to enough. So it's really important to have the physicist at the table, the communications person, somebody who's got a spouse who's in the schools, all of us who have kids in the schools, because also class parent, middle school grants coordinator. In high school, I ran for school committee because I also was not wanted around. So, I think I'm prepared. I've been doing it, and so now I'm really prepared.
Thank you. We'll move on quickly to closing statements. You each have 1 minute. Ms. Leonard, would you go first?
Oh, man. So I've worked really hard and found that school committee is this really, really steep learning curve. And I would like to have my Tuesdays back, plus all the other evenings, but I feel like if I was not elected, which is, of course, a possibility, that the work that I've done would leave with me. I don't feel like I've been able to build on it. I don't, in a way that it gets integrated into the institution. And I think there's been a disruption in our processes since before COVID. I've gone back and looked at previous work in packets, and I feel like there's some continuity that I can provide with the institutional knowledge that I've developed over the last 2 years. So I am asking for one of your 5 votes.
Ms. Hines.
Sure. So I'm Bridget Hines, she, her pronouns. Good to meet you all. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's great to see so many people who really care about democracy in the room with us at this moment. So first, I'm an Amherst parent. Then I'm an educational leader, and I'm an advocate for equity. I have been involved, like I said, from elementary school through the middle school and beyond. And let's see. I ran for election in a time of crisis, and I stepped up for the community at a time very few people wanted to, because I saw I had skills to bring to the table. I don't love being here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, this week on Friday, every night, but it's really important to me. So I feel like Amherst schools have amazing teachers, but they've slipped. It's time to recommit to excellence, to equity, and to community partnership to make them better. I promise you I'll lead with a thoughtful heart, and I ask for one of your 5 votes.
Mr. Hart.
It's so nice to be called Mr. Hart so much. So hi, my name is Andrew Hart. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to Kathy for moderating. I'm a parent. I'm a parent of a 5th grader and a 9th grader. And like I was babbling earlier, sorry. I owe so much to the teachers and to the administrators of these schools for helping me raise my kids so far. They're doing okay. Yeah, I have a strong dedication to communication and figuring out how to help people hear each other and to listen. And I think we need that so much today, especially in our town. I'm racing. I'm a creative problem solver. Oh I'm wasting time thinking. I'm a parent who wants to give back to the schools, to the educators, and to all these great people that I feel indebted to. Thank you.
Ms. Hunter?
Thanks again to the League of Women Voters. I ran 2 years ago because I was horrified and distressed by the way that the administration had betrayed our district. I'm running now because I have been watching what's been happening, and I am eager to put in systems that will last well beyond this particular superintendent. If we've learned anything, it's that our administrators don't stick around, and we need to fix that problem. And I believe that the supervision system that I've been talking about will help support that stability. I also think that my connections to our schools and to our educators is the biggest gift that I have personally and that I can give back by creating spaces for the educators, the students, and the families to really have their voices heard and amplified in a way that has not been happening. Especially the educators really need a chance to talk. So thank you very much for listening to me, and hope I can count on at least 2 or 3 votes for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall.
Toni Morrison wrote, "Don't let anybody convince you this is the way the world is and therefore must be. It must be the way it ought to be." We, all of us here, want to give our students the best and more money to do just that. But one of the most frustrating aspects of school committee service for me has been the collision between our ideals and limiting realities, whether those are financial, time, legal, or bandwidth. Nevertheless, the current Amherst and regional school committees have worked collaboratively and productively during the last 22 months to shift our schools closer to what they ought to be by stabilizing somewhat district leadership, defending our budgets, creating policies to protect our students, and advocating for changes at the state level. I urge voters to re-elect all incumbents so we don't lose our human capital and momentum when we are making progress on many important projects and issues. Thank you.
Thank you, and Ms. Azar.
These are the words. You do not carry this all alone. You do not carry this all alone. Come on, you could sing with me. You do not carry this all alone. You do not carry this all alone. It's hard to sit for an hour and talk. It's stressful. It's hard to listen. So I just want to take a moment to ground us a little bit. Thank you for hosting us and for moderating. Thank you for all of the answers. You can look at my website if you want to know more. I said enough for tonight.
Thank you. Let's give the candidates a round of applause. Okay, we're already behind schedule, so please let's try and have get the candidates for at-large up here. Okay, everybody, could we please sit down and get started again? We are already running behind schedule. May not work. What? Yeah, he did.
Excuse me, we need to get started. We're on a tight schedule. Thank you.
See what she can do without a mic, and I can't even do it with a mic. That's why she's our spokesperson. Okay, now we have 4 candidates for the 3 members at large of Town Council. They're Andrew Churchill, Mandy Jo Haneke. Can't hear me? Sorry. They are Andrew Churchill, I'll start over again, Mandy Jo Haneke, Allegra Clark, and Alicia Walker. So once again, we all encourage you to ask questions, write your questions on an index card for us, and hold it up when you have done so. And silence your cell phones, please, and put them away. And I'll remind you, because obviously I need reminding myself to speak directly into the mic. And Rebecca, I need a question. Thank you. The first question here is, what ideas do you have for increasing turnout and voter engagement with the Town Council and other government committees? Mr. Churchill, would you start?
Sure. Hi. I've been involved in town government in a number of different ways. I was a town meeting member, a school committee member and chair. I was chaired the Charter Commission, and I'm now on the Charter Review Committee. And one of the things we've been thinking about on the Charter Review Committee is, and we've been hearing a lot about, is the question about transparency and communication, which was an issue that came up in the last session. And I think there are actually a lot of different ways for people to be involved and to have voice in our system. And I don't think we have done a good job of creating knowledge about that and sort of a community input protocol that people could understand how they, the various ways that they can have voice. I think a lot of people see public comment at meetings as the way that you hear it, that you have voice, and that's certainly one important way. But there's a number of ways, and the point of having a representative council and school committee and library trustees is that you have people that should be translators to the community, and from the community. So I see my role as being a translator, somebody who can take in from the community what I'm hearing and then also distill back what the government is trying to do on your behalf.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Thank you. So I do agree that our town struggles with providing consistent, accessible, and transparent communication to residents across the town. And this can be because of modes of engagement, also because of language access, and understanding sort of just how our town government works as a whole. I think there's a lack of understanding in our community about how those decisions get made and how people can actually be engaged with our town council outside of public comment. And so I think that usually our community outreach has been very narrow, and we traditionally reach affluent homeowners, and we miss large populations of our BIPOC community, our immigrant community, and also renters who call Amherst their home as well. And so I think that what we can do as a town council is sort of think about the ways in which we engage our community and how we are set up. One of the very concrete ways I'm thinking about specifically is how we allow people to participate in our committees and what that time commitment looks like, understanding what time our committees meet. A lot of our committees meet during the day when folks have to be at work, and so that really limits who can participate in the council. And I also think just valuing our community has been an issue. We had the Charter Commission, which is full of residents, come to the town council just the other night and ask for an extension of time on their work, and it was an uphill battle for them to get an extension of time. And I think we really need to value the time and the commitments that people are making to the town, because this is unpaid labor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
Hola, me llamo Allegra Clark y un problema que todavía tenemos es que nuestras reuniones no son traducidos. So that was Spanish. And I said, my name's Allegra, and one of our problems is that our meetings still aren't translated into other languages. So language access is a huge issue that immediately leaves out a large population. I am a proud parent at Wildwood, and we have over 30 languages spoken in our community. So it's not just Spanish, it's figuring out how can we make our meetings especially more accessible to folks who might not have English as their first language. In terms of voter turnout, I think one of the league's recommendations for the charter review was that the municipal elections actually move to even year cycles so that they're on the same track with the state elections and the federal elections. And I think that that would improve turnout, certainly. And finally, just in terms of communications, I think that there needs to be a more robust system in place. I've signed up for alerts from the town and I don't receive them. And I've had inequitable access to information even about district meetings from my own district counselors. I haven't received invites that have been forwarded to me from my neighbors. So those are things we need to change.
Thank you. Ms. Haneke?
Thank you. We can always do better with transparency. I am proud of my work as vice chair of the Charter Commission when we worked really hard for gaining access to what the Charter Commission was doing. I ran the website that posted every single comment we received by email, in person, every draft of every charter. We worked really hard to make sure that what we were doing was known. We created the public forum concept where people could come and just comment, and we'd listen and we'd try and respond, and then we'd take those back. The town has made some great strides with language access. We have instant pocket translators that are available if you come to a town meeting and a town council meeting in person. I have heard that one of the Civic Academy participants is using that because they do not speak English as a first language, and that it is working well for their participation in that. So part of the issue is getting what we have available out there. In our daily life, there's too many ways to look, right? And trying to cover every single place people go for access is extremely hard. But we just need to keep posting everything, being available, doing all of that. I would love elections to be on an even year. I agree it would turn out election and increased voter turnout. The state law does not allow us to put our elections on the same day as a state election, and it's a shame.
Thank you. What role should the town play in protecting civil liberties and protecting people from ICE? Ms. Clark, would you start with that?
Sorry, my shirt says abolish ICE. So apart from that, I think we have to look at some of the places where ICE has had an extremely heavy presence and some of the innovative things that they are bringing in terms of legislation in their own towns. I believe it's somewhere in Rhode Island was looking at protections for people who are not being detained by ICE, but people who are present during a detention who are either filming or in some way have intervened so that they actually don't have any criminal charges brought upon themselves. So not just a sanctuary for the immigrants themselves, but a sanctuary for those allies who are there to protect them. I also really love the idea that Chicago has made it actually illegal for ICE to operate in their courthouses, and I would love to see
a stronger resolution about ICE not being allowed on properties that are municipally owned or school properties. And I think that we also need to protect all of our constitutional rights, including the right to free speech, freedom of assembly. So those would be priorities.
Thank you. Ms. Haneke.
I agree with a lot of what Allegra just said. We need to protect all of our rights. As a counselor, I was a co-sponsor of a bill that started and hopes to, in our town, protect a right to health care and abortion access. When Texas and other states started criminalizing heading to states like Massachusetts for people who were getting abortions. It's bills like that on various levels that can help us protect the civil liberties of all of our constituents. You know, some things I've seen other states doing is zoning changes to prohibit ICE detentions in various locations. State laws that would allow police officers to, state police officers and local police officers to actually charge federal ICE agents with violations of state law and do stuff like that. I saw an article about that. I think California is looking into that right now. So I think we have to be thinking outside the box in order to make sure that we are making sure all of our civil liberties and First Amendment rights and other rights are being protected in this town.
Thank you. Mr. Churchill?
On November 14th of last year, the town manager, our DEI director, our chief of police, and our superintendent of schools reaffirmed our commitment as Amherst as a sanctuary community. And I think we should continue to wear that label proudly. At the same time, I think we need to recognize that that could make us a magnet or a target for this administration, which seems to delight in that kind of thing. So I don't have all the specifics, but I think there's an urgency in coming up with a real plan, working with our police, working with our schools, and working with our town manager, and regionally as well, to be saying this is coming, this could be coming, let's assume this is coming. This is emergency preparedness. And so, you know, I've heard things like, you know, if somebody is being picked up off the street by an unmarked vehicle with people with masks on, then, you know, you report it as a potential kidnapping, and you get the police to come and document it. But I think we need to see this as something that we need a specific plan with our public safety people and our school people and our town manager soon.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Thank you. Yes, so I agree. I think it's an extremely important role of the town council to be looking at the ways that we can protect all of our rights and civil liberties when a lot of these things are on the chopping block right now, especially at the federal level. I will say that I also am proud that Amherst has maintained its status as a sanctuary committee, and I think that that's going to be an incredibly important strength that we have. But I think this all stems back to community education and community engagement and making sure that our community is fully aware and knowledgeable about what their rights are and what they do, what they can do, and what resources are available to them through the town. And again, that's going to go back to making sure that we provide things in multiple different languages so that we can actually communicate with our community to let them know what's happening. This also goes to funding. We need to make sure that we're providing funding to resources that will be able to help and protect these residents. One of those resources is the CREST program, because it might not be a safe time right now for these folks to be calling the police. And so we need to make sure that there are fully staffed and fully funded alternative resources available to our community members. And I think what's really important, especially for us as counselors, as people who have devoted our time to be the voices for the people in our community, is we need to be willing to stand up for each other and to take strong stances on really important issues, and to not shy down or back away in the face of these really strong threats that are coming down at the federal level.
Thank you. How can the town council and the school committee work together to fund the school system and balance the needs of the town budget? Ms. Haneke.
I will admit that last year was not the greatest shining light on how the school committee and can work with the town council and the other towns, especially at the region, regarding budgeting. I think we've learned a lot. We've been trying to work with the other 3 towns to get a common understanding of each town's budgetary issues and problems, and then trying to work with the school committees through the superintendent on how we can have those conversations in a manner that is open to dialogue. Budgets are tough. I agree we need to find ways to increase our revenues, because if we don't increase our revenues, we cannot increase the budgets the way they need to increase, because the expenses are outpacing inflation and our revenues can only go up so much. So we have to be willing to look at development and all with revenue increases. We cannot forget that not just the schools, but the municipality is also people heavy, and that comes with insurance issues with the with both sides of it. Everyone is facing crazy insurance costs and all, and we have to find a way to have the conversations in a manner that allows us to fund every important service for all of our residents in a way that gets us to what all of our residents need.
Thank you. Mr. Churchill?
Yeah, I'm running because I think that we're going to keep having these bad budget years that drive us into our respective corners, fighting over inadequate resources if we don't figure out some new revenue sources. So I think we have a lot of potential for developing new revenue, and I think we've demonstrated over the past decade where we've developed some new housing, and that has brought in. It's now bringing in about $2 million a year, which is about what you would usually ask for in an override. So we haven't had to have an override in the last decade because we've built some new housing. So I'm not saying that we should just put it indiscriminately or willy-nilly, but I think we need to figure out the revenue picture, because otherwise we're going to be, having some really tough conversations. But I spent my career in education. I have a master's in public policy. I'm used to sort of trying to adopt a problem-solving mindset. And I think we've got a big problem in town, which is that we don't have enough money. And so everybody is afraid that their particular kids or roads or healthcare is going to be gored. And so I really want us to figure out ways for the town council and the school committee to use data on trends and costs and resources and problem solve from that basis.
Ms. Walker?
Thank you. I think so. Our schools are not adequately funded, and I think we just heard that really clearly from the school committee forum. We've seen staff and program cuts for the entire time I've at least been on the council, and I'm sure much longer before that. I think that the school committee and the council really need to work on establishing a more honest and open working relationship right now that allows us to look at school funding across periods of time longer than just the budget season. And so while the school committee is responsible for addressing specific decisions related to school operations, it is in my purview as a counselor to make sure that they have the budget and the resources that they need in order to do those things and to provide the students with what they need. And so I think that we need to look at changing the school funding formula. I know that that has been said a lot, and yes, there is a revenue issue. I think that's very clear, but I think that there are things that we could do while we're waiting for those solutions. And so some of the things that I've seen, again, here on my time serving on the council, is that the school has come to us for supplemental budget asks, small things, $52K to restore our art teachers to full-time, to restore our technology teachers to full-time. We have a surplus every single year in our budget. We have free cash. We turn down a $52K budget supplement for the school committee. These are very small things that we can do as a council to support the schools while we're looking at these more long-term solutions that I think are going to be a little bit more challenging, but also very important, because our kids are our future. They're the most important and consequential investment that we can make.
Thank you. And Ms. Clark?
So I am a graduate of this high school, and I was here at a time when the portion of the municipal budget was about 60% for the schools. It was 2003. We were in the top 10 in the state, and so many of the programs that were here when I was here have been cut. I would urge everyone to listen to the voices of the students, and the Graphic, the high school newspaper, just put out a series of articles that really highlight some of the impacts of the cuts. So please take time to read those. In terms of what we can do, I think that there does need to be a more collaborative relationship between the school committee and town council. I think working with the fiscal sustainability group is perhaps a good start. But I think that it comes down to thinking creatively and looking at the data. So I have, fiscal year 21, there was a $4,941,259 surplus at the end of the year. This fiscal year 24, it was $6,749,831. We need to think about how can that money not just go into capital expenses, but how can it be used in operating, because that's 3 times the amount of the cuts that were made. So we could have saved all of those positions.
Thank you. What strategies and policies do you plan to put in place to improve housing availability and affordability? Ms. Walker, could you start?
Yes, thank you. So I think housing affordability and housing availability is one of the biggest crises that our town is facing at this time. And I know that it's a statewide or regional issue, but I think that some of the things we need to look at is how we can support both our renters and our homeowners in housing affordability. This is like the #1 issue I've heard knocking on the doors, is that not only are rental prices increasing every year, but taxes are also increasing, and even homeowners are having a hard time keeping up with those increases. And so I think we really need to be looking at what we're doing as a council, because we are working on a lot of initiatives at this time that are increasing our taxes. And so we need to be thinking about what creative and strategic ways we can continue to pursue things like our capital building plan without increasing our taxes for families and therefore also increasing our renting prices. I think we need to be building more diverse housing stock across town. So we need to be looking at zoning, and we need to be looking at strategically placing these things in maybe mixed-use buildings downtown. And I think that the town needs to come up with some assistance funds that are available for residents to utilize in the case of emergency, because I have seen a mass exodus of families in this town. I've lived here since the 90s, and especially low-income families have had to leave. And yes, I know, again, a lot of these things come back to our revenue issues, but if we want to increase our revenue, we're going to have to get more people to move here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
So I am a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, so that has been really deeply on my mind for the last 4 years since I've been on it. I also am the co-chair of the Community Safety and Social Justice Committee, and last night we actually had Jessica Allen from Valley Community Development come and talk to us about the Amherst Community Homes project that is going to be the affordable homeownership opportunities up on Ball Lane in North Amherst. And I really love the model that they are looking at. And one of the things that she had actually mentioned, which kind of echoes what Alicia had to say, was that she was hoping that the town would perhaps make some reparations funding available to help with down payment assistance for these first-time home buyers. And if all is working, it would be great if the reparations committee was up and running by then, and hopefully that will be the case. But we just went through the housing production plan process. I'm just going to highlight a few things that I think are promising. One is establishing the 40R Smart Growth Overlay District in Amherst that would allow for between 20 to 25% of affordability for low to moderate income houses. I think the idea of reducing minimum parking requirements is important if you're looking at density, but that conversation has to be had with transportation increase as well. There's more. Go to my website.
Thank you. Ms. Haneke?
One of the very few things that the council can do to actually affect housing affordability is zoning changes. And I have been someone that doesn't just talk about what we can do with zoning, but I actually make proposals. They're not always successful, and that's okay. But if we as counselors are not actually proposing solutions, we're just being passive listeners in the conversation. So what I've done is co-sponsor transfer fee legislation for transfer fees on real estate sales to direct money raised to affordable and attainable housing, zoning reform to lower barriers to building. That proposal with fellow councilor DeAngelis, while withdrawn, led directly to the creation of the University Drive Overlay District and the conversations that helped create that. I proposed co-sponsored rental housing reform bills. I co-sponsored resolutions supporting state legislation on transfer fees for real estate and on state legislation providing a right to an attorney in eviction cases and sealing of eviction court records to promote housing access. The housing production plan that is being adopted and hopefully will be adopted by the council in 2 to 3 weeks has some zoning strategies. The ones I would focus on are enabling the creation of missing middle housing, redefining apartment uses, facilitating infill development, and amending our IZ bylaw to encourage more low and middle income units. But we need counselors that are willing to actually draft the proposals, and I am one that will do that.
Thank you. Mr. Churchill?
As I mentioned, I've been this is an issue, and I actually wrote a column about the role housing is already playing and continue to play in expanding the pie of our town revenues. But in terms of how we want to go forward from here, I think we need to make revenue generation through housing development a priority. And then I think we need to set goals for the amount of revenue we need to adequately support our schools and our other services. So we have a returning finance director now who's worked both in the schools and in the town and understands the finances of both. So why don't we get that person and our various committees to come together and set a target for additional revenue growth, and then identify the types of projects that will generate that type of revenue based on our tax format, and then ensure that zoning accommodates those types of projects in appropriate areas. I think the ball lane affordable owner-occupied housing is a wonderful project that was just mentioned. I also think that there's plenty of opportunity for additional student housing that's not in our neighborhoods, but over on Olympia Drive, across from near the firehouse and across from UMass, there's unused land that could accommodate more housing. But I was very pleased to see the planning board come up with a series of places where we could build housing that seems like appropriate locations. And I think if we target housing as a revenue and then identify zoning that will do that, that's something we can work on.
Churchill, we need to move on.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. How will you support the Community Safety Working Group recommendations, and how will you help the town adopt and fund them? Ms. Clark, would you start with that, please?
Yes. So like I just said, I am the co-chair of the Community Safety and Social Justice Committee. So that is the committee that came out of the Community Safety Working Group's recommendations. So I meet regularly with the CREST director and the DEI director as part of my committee work and get updates about their progress. So my concern is that CREST has not been adequately resourced since the beginning, and it hasn't followed the pattern of staffing that was recommended, nor has the timing of the availability been what was studied for the most impactful times to operate, which would be from 4 p.m. to midnight. Currently, they're open 8 to 4, but the call types that were identified really happen in the evening. So we need to, A, reverse the freezes that occurred to the budget. We need to expand the hours, I would say, so that they are operating in the time that they would be most productive. And I think One other really important recommendation that hasn't been implemented that I would like to see is the Youth Empowerment Center. There are more, but that one specifically with where our schools are with the funding is important for continuity.
Thank you. Mr. Churchill?
Yeah, I was pleased to see the league bring that the Community Safety Working Group's recommendations back to the forefront with a forum they just had recently, and there's a series of recommendations. One was to have a DEI director. We do now have a DEI director, which is great. There were also some very interesting recommendations on the police that came from several reports from these retired public safety folks who came in and analyzed our call volume and looked at our policies on the use of armed force and on the use of pulling people over for minor taillights and things like that. So there's a series of recommendations on how our police policies need to be revised just to be in alignment with the state laws and the state policies on enlightened policing. I do feel like we've had a well-trained police force and a police force that has cared about community members, but I think the LEAP report also indicated that there were a number of ways that unarmed responders could help. I think Northampton, I think we're still working on what the model should be for that. I know Northampton uses a public health model, and there's dispatch issues, and we need to work on that.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Thank you. So my first introduction to town government was actually being the co-chair of the Community Safety Working Group, which was where all of these recommendations originated from. And so I have supported and I will continue to support all of these recommendations to fruition. That is actually one of the exact reasons that I ran for council. Specifically, one of the recommendations that is very dear to me is the Youth Empowerment Center. I think, again, we've just heard from the school committee in terms of like how many resources for youth in this community are being cut. And our youth, specifically our BIPOC youth, need safe places to be in this community. We do not have any community centers. We do not have a Boys and Girls Club. This is a safety issue. This is a community safety issue. Our youth are being profiled. I also think that, the town has tried to bring up some of these recommendations. We have the CREST department, we have the DEI department. They are both underfunded and understaffed. And so we really need to fully staff these departments and fully fund them so that they can really realize the vision that we had at the Community Safety Working Group, which was an extensive process of community input and data collection. So these recommendations are fully fleshed out. Like, we do not need to do any more research. We do not need to follow any models from Northampton. We have the full recommendation. We need to follow the recommendation. And I will say lastly that one of the most important things we can do on the council to help see these through is to listen to and believe Black residences, and to use their lived experiences as data. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Haneke?
Thank you. I supported the creation of CREST 3 years ago in hopes that after 3 years we would be able to evaluate it to see how it's working. And I actually agree, it's not working as we expected it to work. I think there's differences as to what needs done with that, but it isn't working. It is not getting dispatch calls. We've got disputes as to why it's not getting dispatch calls, but, we've got a couple of models, and I think it's also time maybe we look at, are there other models out there that might do what we actually want it to do? That doesn't mean we need to change it, but I think we have to consider not having a program written in stone and saying this is how we started it and this must be how it continues at all times. In order to improve, we need to constantly be looking at how to improve. And I think that's a necessary thing with our CREST program, that we should look at the Northampton model that seems to be working, if that's the way we want to go. And I don't know whether it is, but I don't think we can ignore that other towns have a model that is working maybe better than ours, maybe not better than ours. The CSO officer responds to, which is a co-responder model, but they respond to more calls than or nearly the same amount of calls as our CREST do from dispatch without getting dispatched to it. They listen to the radio and respond on their own. Why aren't our CREST officers doing that? So I think there's a lot we can do, as many people have said.
Okay, thank you. Last question here. What are two goals or priorities you have for the town council that could show measurable progress in the next year? Mr. Churchill.
There's so many goals we could set for the town council and for the community. I would say that two of my top priorities are working closely with my colleagues on the council and on the school committee to figure out how we support excellence in our schools in these very difficult times. The other is trying to make these times a little less difficult by expanding the pie of revenues, primarily through identifying appropriate sites for housing development that will bring in more revenue. I think without that revenue, it's going to be very difficult to do the quality of things and the variety of things that we all feel we need and want in this town for our quality of life. So I guess housing and schools, and I guess I would also like to see the school committee and the town council expect more from our leaders, from the people we hire to lead our systems. I feel like, there's 13 counselors and there's 5 Amherst and 9 regional school committee members, and if we're all trying to answer, to try to figure this out in a big huddle, I think that's difficult. I think we hire people with professional expertise, and I would like to see the superintendent and the town manager communicating better to bring solutions to us that don't gore any of one of our particular oxen.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you. So I think there are a lot of things that need to be done, but I will pick 2 that I feel like will be easy for us to accomplish in the next 2 years. So like one of my main priorities as a counselor is to lower barriers and equity to participation in town government, whether that be in the capacity of serving on a government committee or just providing public input. I think that we need to do a better job at rooting our decision making in the values of our community, and we cannot do that if we do not hear from more of our residents and if we do not change the way that our government runs so that it is more accessible. I think the second thing that can be done is really looking at our budgeting practices, because again, revenue is an issue. I think that's going to be a long-term thing that we need to look at. But again, while we're waiting to figure out how we can increase revenue, there are things that we can do. There are reallocations. There's things we can move around in the budget that will better reflect the values that we hold in our town. And again, I think that circles back to making sure that more and more diverse community members can really engage with our council so that we can make sure that we are representing those values in how we are spending our money and how we are making our decisions.
Thank you. Ms. Haneke?
Thank you. It will be no surprise that one of my priorities or goals would be some zoning proposals that councilors propose regarding affordable housing and creating more opportunity for building more affordable and attainable housing. We are legislators. We should be legislating, and zoning proposals is one way to address our housing crisis. And so one priority is to propose them. Hopefully other councilors will propose stuff too and get them moving, and hopefully they will address that. That goes right into the second one, which is begin our conversations on budget and school funding and municipal funding earlier, be open about all of our options, be willing to change past practices. Because the revenue is so limited and the ability to increase it in any one year is limited, we have to take the long-term plans. But yeah, we have to do something in the meantime. We're going to have to face trade-offs because the revenue is just not increasing at the height and the speed that health insurance is increasing, that inflation is increasing, that the costs of doing infrastructure improvements are increasing. So we have to have the conversations about what trade-offs regarding services and development we're willing to have as a town. It's not just a conversation that can happen at the council only. We have to facilitate as councilors conversations about what trade-offs we can make, because there's not enough to do it all, and we still need to maintain strong budgeting and fiscal protections.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
I would like to see transparency and equity in our budgeting process. I think one thing that we could request of the town manager is to accurately forecast anticipated revenue and expenses so that we're not seeing $4 to $6 million in surplus, so that our operating budgets can actually be fully funded, and we're not seeing cuts every year. I think we also need to think about the process that we currently use where everybody just gets the same 4% slice of the pie increase. That's not necessarily how other municipalities do it, and it might be time for the schools to get a bigger increase than other areas. So those are just a few things that I would like to see on the budgeting side. And then I think that there's a quality of life issue in this town. I think people are worried about the quality of schools, the quality of roads. People can't afford to live here anymore, and people are concerned about their safety. And I think that there would be many policies that we could put in place or programs that already exist that we could strengthen to address these things. Again, CRESS would be a priority for me, and looking at the housing production plan to adopt the things that will maximize housing affordability for all residents.
Thank you. We'll move on to closing statements, 1 minute each. Ms. Haneke, would you start?
Thank you. Thank you to the League for hosting us this evening, and Kathy, to you for moderating. In my 3 terms on the council, I have proven that I can forge collaborative relationships to make Amherst a vibrant, healthy town that respects all voices, addresses climate change, tackles our housing crisis, and plans for the future in a fiscally responsible manner. I've sponsored legislation to increase the diversity of housing in town, to generate more funding for affordable and attainable housing, to reduce our energy usage, to ensure access to health care, and to keep our kids safe when entering and exiting school buses. As can be seen, I don't just talk about what needs done, I work to make it happen by proposing legislation. I don't passively wait for others to propose the legislation on my priorities. I propose the solutions and usher them through the legislative process. If reelected, I'll continue working to address our housing crisis, to improve our infrastructure, and address the fact that our revenues are not keeping pace with inflation or the needs of the residents. If you put your trust in me, I'll continue working hard to represent all of Amherst's residents well. Please vote for me for Town Councilor at Large. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Yes, so thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and to everyone who came out tonight. I think sometimes people don't always see how policies and the language we use in government connect to real life experiences on the ground, how those decisions show up in people's everyday lives. And that's part of why I'm running for re-election. I've lived in Amherst for my entire life. I have 3 children in our public schools, and I am a graduate student studying public policy at UMass, where I've maintained a 4.0 GPA average, and I will graduate in May. I bring both lived and learned experience to this role. Our town council should reflect the true diversity of our community in terms of race, age, income, and family structure. And as a single parent, I understand the challenges that many families face here. I've shown up in communities across Amherst from Village Park to Rolling Green, or if you're old school, from North Village to South Point, listening, learning, and amplifying the voices of my constituents. It has been a true honor to serve you all for the last 4 years, and I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I would really appreciate your vote on November 4th so that I can continue to do this work with you and for our community.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Hi, thank you to the League, to everybody who came, and to the high school for hosting. I, again, am a proud public school grad, a proud public school parent. I'm a social worker, which has taught me to listen and to meet people where they are. And I've worked grassroots organizing in this community and have sat on both the Affordable Housing Trust and the Community Safety Social Justice, which I co-chair, which means I agenda set. I reach out to people to make sure they come to the meeting, and I share that information out with networks. So I really want community involvement. That's really important to me, as is transparency in the processes that we go through. So I would ask for one of your at-large votes, and you can check more about me on my website, allegraforamherst.org, and on the ballot, my name will be Charlotte Allegra Rice Clark, because I was really afraid that they would take my voting rights away if I didn't use my full government name. So there we have it.
And Mr. Churchill?
Well, thanks to all. Amherst has many pressing challenges, including insufficient revenues and housing affordability. But I believe the greatest barrier to addressing them is our division as a community. Too often I see us drawing artificial lines or questioning the motives of others and lumping people into one camp or another. Yet when I look at the various town council candidates, I see some broadly shared priorities: housing affordability, excellent schools, solid infrastructure, community safety, and climate action. Balancing these important priorities is made challenging by insufficient revenues, but these are things we can get our hands around if we think systemically, assume good intent, and focus on collaborative problem solving. There's Loretta Ross at Smith College has the idea of calling in rather than calling out, and I think that's what we need to do in these tough times. We need to call each other in to figure out things together. I think our conflicts in some ways reflect our broader society's culture, but they're also difficult because the issues are complex, with multiple sides holding different perspectives and feeling threatened for different reasons. I think we can work together and solve problems together.
Thank you. Let's give our candidates a round of applause. Thank you again for coming tonight, and check out the League's website, the Town Clerk's website, and Amherst Media for more information.
Are we going to talk about all the same things?
Maybe? I don't know.
What more? Yeah, I know.